Good morning. This is Don McGrath, co-founder of Speakers Pathway Coalition. To all the stage warriors out there, I just wanted to share a couple things that are on my mind. And this is, I'm going to tell you a story that I seldom share. It's a personal story. And I hope it is of service to you and helps you along your journey on sharing your message and changing many people's lives. So the other day I was talking to one of our members, and they were looking at spending a significant amount of money on something, on a training program. And so we talked it through, kind of what would be the value and, what does it mean to them financially, and, what is the right fit, what might be some things to consider. And it got me thinking about times in my life when I've had to make decisions about being uncomfortable about spending money and what it meant and what are maybe some of the lessons to be learned. Because there's a few different scenarios. Hey, Kathy, thanks for joining. There's a few different scenarios. One scenario is where you might invest a lot of money into something and you have the money. It's just a lot of money. It's uncomfortable. And there the outcome is, if it doesn't really benefit you, you chalk it up to, learning and move on. Then there's times when your back is up against the wall and you invest a lot of money into something and it kind of has to work, or it's going to mean really difficult times ahead, right? You won't be able to do some things that you need to do. You may be in horrible debt. So there's a few different scenarios, and I just wanted to share a couple with you. So one scenario is where I engaged in a training from a particular company, and I took some of their training courses and they were good. And then they offer a mastermind, a one-year mastermind, of which I paid close to $18,000 for. Okay, for almost anyone, that's a lot of money. And it doesn't break my bank, but it was a lot of money to spend. And to make a long story short on this one, I really didn't get much out of it. There were supposed to be three meetings where masterminds, the people who were members of the mastermind, got together and helped each other to grow their business. Well, I went to one, and they did nothing but pitch me on buying other stuff. And I didn't go to the second one, and the third one got canceled. And then the coaching that was supposed to happen monthly didn't happen for about a third of the year because there was some change within the company. So and I tried to get my money back, and it was futile. So that was a situation where, it hurt. It didn't sink me financially, but it was painful, and I learned a lesson from that about, who you spend money with. You got to be really careful, because that could have been used in so many better ways. And now I want to tell you another story. And this is a story I seldom share. And many of you may not know my background. Many of you may not know, kind of how I grew up and where I came from. But I came from a pretty modest household. My dad worked in a grocery store. My mom raised us kids. And so we never really had a lot. And as I got into high school and started making decisions about what I wanted to do with the rest of my life, no one in my immediate family had ever gone to a university or a four-year college. And so it really didn't seem like something that was kind of feasible, or didn't even seem like something that, would make any sense for me, or would even be something that I should entertain. Well, all my friends from the track team, I ran track and cross country in high school, they all were going off to Cortland and Cornell and Syracuse and all over the place. They were going to college. But it really didn't seem like something that was right for me. So in my junior year, I made the career decision that I was going to enroll in a VOTEC program, a vocational training program, that to train to become an electrician. So all of my junior year, I would go, I forget what it was, 3 days a week or 4 days a week. I would go over to a high school that was in a different city about a half an hour away, and I was taking these classes. from a person who had been a professional electrician. And I learned how to do house wiring. I learned all about circuits and how to do single pole switches, double pole switches, install all kinds of stuff. And it was a great experience. And I really, really enjoyed it. And I did very, very well at it, because I was kind of okay with math and physics and those kinds of things in high school. So come my senior year, so I was all set, right? I was going to become an electrician, and that was my path. Come my senior year, there's some cuts in federal and state funding, and they decide to cut that program. So the rug was kind of pulled out from underneath me. So have you ever had the rug pulled out from underneath you when you had a plan? You know, a plan that seemed like it was right, a plan that you were marching along successfully on, and you kind of counted on. Well, that's what happened. That I got, rug pulled out from under me. And there I was, starting my senior year, not having prepared to attend a college, not even entertaining an application. And I thought to myself, well, what can I do? Well, I could go into some of the other trades that, maybe carpentry, which I didn't really, it wasn't my bag. I could, there was another program at another school, something about industrial electronics or something. That didn't seem up my alley either. So I was kind of dealt this hand, and I had to make a decision. So I looked around at all my friends, and all of them, in fact, most people I knew and my contemporaries that I kind of knew in the classes that I was in, they were going to colleges and universities. So I thought to myself, well, maybe this is something I should entertain. And so I talked to my guidance counselor and thought about it, talked to my mother, of course. My mother, being the wise woman that she was, when I asked her, Mom, what should I do? She said, do whatever makes you happy. Do whatever makes you happy. And I said, thanks, Mom. That's really helpful. But it actually was some of the best advice I could have ever received. So I kind of figured maybe this is the path for me. So I looked at what would it mean. I was also good in math and physics and stuff. So I talked to various people. My options were physical education, because I was really into athletics, or engineering, because I was good in those domains. So I talked to people. I talked to my track coach at the time, who was a phys ed person. And he said, well, if I were you and I can do it, I would do engineering, because, what I do right now, I'm kind of a glorified babysitter. So I decided, well, okay, this is what I'm going to do. So I started doing the applications. Then I found out it was going to be pretty expensive to go to college, because I decided to go to a private school in Rochester, New York. And so I went to do the application. I got accepted. And I found out, well, gosh, I didn't have the money. And of course, my family didn't have the money. So what did I do? Obviously, student loans were a good option. So I remember distinctly, I remember this day of my mother and I walking down to the First National Bank of Scotia, which is a small town I grew up in. And we went down in there and we met with Mr. Burmaster, who is the president of the bank. And we talked about loans and what this would really mean. And so we talked about it, and we figured I would need to borrow about $2,500 for my first year of school. And they gave me the paperwork. My mom and I kind of marched off to home and filled out all the paperwork, most of which I didn't really understand. We had to seek advice on how to fill it out, because it was both of our first time through it. And then I remember going back to the bank and sitting down with the application. And I remember sitting down at a big wooden desk across from Mr. Burmaster, and him looking at me and my mother, explaining that, this was a loan. It was going to need to be repaid, the terms of the guaranteed student loan, what it really meant, what it meant to be a cosigner, and the gravity. I remember sitting across that wooden desk and dealing with this man who's a banker, very successful banker. And here I am, a high school kid, right? And I distinctly remember being really, really scared. And in my mind was, well, what if I'm not successful? what if I fail out? What if I drop out? What if I can't pay this back? What if? And I was terrified. And I remember, what if I can't? And then my mom has to, oh my goodness, that could be terrible things. That was a lot of money back in the 80s. So I remember very, 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 very scared. But I decided, studied it and looked at it, and college back then was pretty good investment. And if I were to graduate, then the chance of me being able to, pay that back was really, really, really good. So I decided to go with the fact that I had never really had a horrible failure in my life, never really proved myself that I couldn't do things that I set my mind to. And so I bit the bullet, and I remember signing that loan, being terrified, absolutely terrified. Then I proceeded to work my tail off. I decided not to run track or cross country that first year because I was like, I need to focus on this. And so I really focused on, my grades, doing school, doing it right, figuring it out. And I found it wasn't all that bad. I learned a lot. Of course, there were some hard times, and I had some classes I had to withdraw from and whatever, things that everybody goes through. But I went on to complete my degree. And, from that point on, and I still remember when I graduated, I thought, well, what if I don't get a job? But I think back then, having an electrical engineering degree was a pretty good chance you were going to get a job. And I went on to have a very great career with that degree. And I exited college with $10,000 in loans, with which I paid them back in about 5 or 6 years after I graduated. So that was a really good investment. And over my career, I grossed close to $8 million. So that was a very, very, very good investment. So I tell this story not to impress you at all. It's not the point of the story. The point of the story is to make a point. And the point is, sitting where I was in that desk across from Mr. Burmaster at the First National Bank of Scotia, with all this, fancy dressed people around me, a little high school kid, right? And the fact I was terrified, looking at the data that I proved myself I could do things that I wanted to do. I had the capabilities. Back then, going to school was a good investment. So just subjectively looking at that and overcoming the fear and just saying, I'm going to do this, and then working my tail off to make it happen. So that is the recipe. That is the recipe. So when you're considering whether to make one of those big investments that you're kind of scared of, you got to consider the source. Who are you investing with? What's their track record? The people who have graduated, it better be in the 90+% that they do really, really well. If it's in the 10%, look for another place to invest your money. So, that's the lesson that I took away, is do your due diligence in where you invest. And those investments can yield things you never could have dreamed of. Could I ever have dreamed, as that high school kid sitting across from the banker in his suit, that little leap of faith, that little leap of faith in myself and in the process and the institutions of higher education? Would I ever have thought that I could gross over $8 million? Would I ever thought that not only would I complete my bachelor's degree, but also my master's degree and my PhD? So that those little leaps of faith that aren't pure faith, they've got their due diligence behind them, right? It's a proven system with really good odds of paying back. Those are really worth your investment and your time and your effort. And also ask yourself if you're willing to do the work. If you're willing to write the check but not do the work, don't do it, because it does take work. All right, so this is a story that, again, I don't share very often. When I share it, people are often surprised that a little serendipitous event of a cut in some state or federal funding that canceled a program that had it not happened, I would be an electrician today. And I'm sure I'd be very happy. And I just never get to walk that road. But this serendipitous event that was a setback, and the way I responded by looking at kind of what is a good path, doing my due diligence, having that leap of faith, and then working my tail off, that is a path. That is a proven path. So next time you're faced with a big decision about spending a lot of money that you're uncomfortable with, look at those things. What is the source? What's the likelihood of getting that back? Do your due diligence. Once you commit to not only investing, but in doing the work that's required to make that come to fruition. And give yourself permission when there are setbacks. I had setbacks. I had plenty of setbacks. My mom died when I was in college. Almost quit. You know, you're going to have setbacks. And when you have setbacks, just acknowledge them, forgive yourself, and move the heck on. You know, just keep in mind what you're trying to accomplish and be willing to do the work. Just be willing to do the work. So this is Don. I hope this was helpful. I hope it was instructive. I hope you learned something, and I hope it can help you make some decisions about where you're headed and the kind of things that you want to do and how you spend your hard-earned money. All right, this is Don, Stage Warrior, and have a blessed day. Peace out.